We begin today the Gemara on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, 11 lines up from the bottom of the Amud, where it says Mechuser Begadim. One of the cases in the Mishnah, a kohen that serves without wearing his garments, the Aveda will be puzzled. Minallah, what's the source for this? Some Rabbi Vo, Rabbi Yechanan, Umate b'mishmei de Rabbi Lazar, but Rabbi Shimon, and others said that this was brought in the name of Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. The Makra, the pasuk says, V'chagarta oisam avneit. You should put on the gartel, Aaron Uvanav, Aaron and his children, V'chavashtalem mikbois. You put them on these special hats. V'haisalehem kuhuna l'chuk hasaylam. And this will be for them for their priestlyhood, and then it concludes l'chuk hasaylam. So these words, v'haisa lehem kohuna, what does this mean? Bisman shebigdeim aleim, if they're wearing their garments, kohunasam aleim, their kohuna takes effect on them. Ein bigdeim aleim, if they're not wearing these garments, ein kohunasam aleim. It's like he's not a kohen. He's wearing plain garments. He's like a non-kohen. So if he's a non-kohen, then the avodah will be puzzle. Like Gemara asks him, this is the source for this halacha, but mahasam nafke. We learn it out from a different source, as the Gemara brings here from a brayse. The Tanya we learned in a brayse, it says, Minayel shesuye yayin. So it begins first with the halacha of a kohen that drank wine, shem avad, that if he serves in the Beis HaMikdash, chilel, the aved is desecrated. Talmud Loima, the pasuk says, yayin v'sheichar al teisht v'goymer, should not drink wine. And then it says, Ulahavdol ben hakodesh ben hachol, to separate between what's holy and what's desecrated. Now what that means is that if you do not drink wine, the Aveda is accepted, kodesh. If you do, then it's machalo, it desecrates the Aveda. Now the Brayse goes on to say, Mechusa begadim, the kohen that's not wearing the garments, v'shaloi rochetz yadayim v'raglayim, or he did not wash his hands and feet before in the kir, before he begins his Aveda, minayin. How do I know that this will also passel the Aveda? Talmud Loimar, we learn it with Gzeira Shava because it says Chuka Gzeira Shava. It says here, by the pasuk by the wine, it says Chuka Seilam, and it also says regarding the halacha of putting on the garments. The pasuk also uses the term of V'haisa Lehem. It says L'Chuka Seilam, and it also says by washing hands and feet. The term of Chuka Seilam. So I learn out the term of Chuka, to say that the same halacha that applies by drinking wine that passes the Aveda, the same applies also regarding the not wearing garments and not washing hands and feet. Okay, so we have a new source here, this Gzeira Shava of Chukka, not the source that the Gemara brought before, that we learned from the pasuk where it says V'chagarta, then it says V'haisa lehem kohuna, that only wearing the garments is the kohuna on the kohen. Answers the Gemara, no, we still need the pasuk from before, because email hasam, if I would be learning out only from the case where it speaks about drinking wine, havamina, I would say, hani mili, which avedis are going to be puzzle? That's avede, the zar, chayiv aleh misa. Only those avedis that if a non-kohen serves in the Beis HaMikdash, he would be chayiv misa for this. Because there in the pasuk, by the wine, what does it say? That if you drink wine and you serve in the Beis HaMikdash, he's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. Now, when is he chayiv that misa? Only in similar cases to when a zar, a non-kohen serves, is also chayiv misa. And as Rashi here brings, the Gemara in another place learns this out, that it's only specific avedis. It has to be a kind of aveda where you're actually putting something on the mizbeach. There's other steps in the aveda before, but this has to be something where you're putting on the mizbeach, like sprinkling the blood on the mizbeach, or burning on the mizbeach, or even the water or the wine that's poured directly on the mizbeach. And it also has to be an aveda which completes, aveda that is about the time, aveda tama. But otherwise, there's no misa. So if so, I would say that the same applies over here regarding the fact that he must wear garments, and otherwise it's machal da aveda. Maybe it's only specifically these avedas. But if aval aveda the ein zar chayiv aleh misa, any other aveda which a zar is not chayiv misa for this, I would say it's not necessary for the kohen to wear the garments. Kamash Malan, therefore we have the pasuk before where it says V'haisa kohun lahem kohuna l'chok hasaylam. From that we see that he has to be wearing the garments by other avedis as well. Just like a zar is not allowed to do the other avedis as well, like Kabbalah, Hilacha, when you receive the blood, when you walk with the blood, even if he's not chayiv misa for that, but he's not allowed to do the aveda, and he's mechalal it if he does. So too over here, we learn out from the pasuk before that it will be mechalal the aveda. So now the Gemara turns around and says, Ashkecha mechusa begadim. So I see over here that all these kinds of avedis, if it's done without wearing the garments, then the Aveda will be puzzle. Shesuye yayin minolon. Regarding a kind that drank wine, though, where do I know that the additional Avedas are also going to be puzzle? And not only what's indicated in this pasuk where it speaks about the wine, where it says that he will be chayiv misa, which is only unique Avedas. How do I know to add the additional ones like we did by the Mechusa Begadim? And says the Gemara, Asya. Yeah. So the Gemara here brings the source. And says the Gemara, Asya choka mechusa begadim. We learn it out with the Gzei Shava mentioned before. We compare wine with the term choka to what it says by lack of garments with the word choka, that say that just like by the lack of garments, it's by all the Avedas, the same also with the kind that drank wine. Now, so the Gemara says, if that's the case, but the problem is, but v'hatane, in the Braisa though, it sounds like it says differently. The Braisa says, ulahavdul bein kanasiv law. The Braisa says, from where do I know that if a kohen drank wine, that he's mechal the Aveda? It brings the pasuk that it says that if he drank wine, then it will be mechal. Because it says in the pasuk, lahavdul ben kodesh ben achayil. It doesn't say you learn from the Gzei Shava. So how are we now saying we're learning it from the Gzei Shava? Says the Gemara, mekamit eleikim Gzei Shava. In the beginning, the Tana brings this pasuk of Olahavdil. That's before he quotes the Gzei Shava. But once he quotes the Gzei Shava, that's actually the main source for the wine as well, to say that it applies to all Avedas, not only what's limited in this pasuk.
So the Gzei Shava has a stronger...
Yes, a stronger source to add even more. Okay, so what the Gemara now asks, but v'hatane, or v'hatane, mechusa begadim, hu dekayalev, mishasuya yayin. The Tana actually uses this Gzei Shava in the opposite. He says that we're learning out the Mechusa Begadim, the one that's lacking the garments. How do we know that he is Mechal Aveda? That's learned out through this Gzei Shava from the case of the Kohen that drinks the wine. Now the Gemara is saying that it, that it actually works the other way around. The Kohen that drinks wine, how do we know that he's Mechal any Aveda? We learn it out from the Mechusa Begadim. But the Braisa seems to say the opposite. So the Gemara says, no, this is how we have to understand the Braisa. This is what the Braisa is saying. How do we know not to make a distinction between the one that serves with not all garments and the one that drank wine and didn't wash his hands and feet? How do we know not to make a distinction between them? In other words, the way the Gemara is teaching the words that it says in the Braisa. The Braisa says, what it means is, how do we know not to make a distinction between the one that drinks wine and the one that's not wearing the garments? That's what it means. We learn out this Gzei Shava to compare the two, that by wine, it'll be possible if he drank wine, just like it is when he does not wear the garments, for all kinds of avodas, not only for what's limited in this pasuk where it's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim.
What about the washing of the hands and the feet?
Also learned from the same Gzei Shava.
So
the Gemara, it's all learned from here, but the Gemara actually will discuss that subject later on here in this Pedic. We'll see. Okay, so now the Gemara comes back and asks, so Ella, if so, lahavdil lamali. Here regarding drinking wine, when the pasuk adds this term that this is going to make the Aveda puzzle. Lahavdil ben HaKadosh ben Achel. Why is it necessary to say this? I have the Gzei Shava, the word chukah. The word chukah itself is enough to learn with the Gzei Shava from the one that doesn't wear garments. It says the Gemara lekiderav, when it says Lahavdil ben HaKadosh ben Achel, it's teaching me something that's not even relevant for a kohen. It's a different halacha, like Rav said, or what we see by Rav. The Rav Rav did not bring his interpreter, and in other words, he didn't give a lecture and have an interpreter explaining what he's saying, from one Yom Tiv, after he already ate the meal, until the next day of the Yom Tiv, because he already ate the meal, and he drank wine, and he could be under the influence of the wine, intoxicated. So then you're not allowed to teach Torah and Paskin Adin. So what we're learning from this pasuk, Lahavdil ben HaKadosh ben Achayil, is not only regarding a kohen that serves in the Beis HaMikdash, but also a Rav that's paskin Adin, that he should not paskin when he's under the influence of wine, because then his psaktim will not be accepted. That's what the pasuk is adding with the Lahavdil, a separate concept. Okay, well, now the Gemara continues regarding the kohen that serves without the garments. And the Gemara brings actually that there's a third source that we find that we learn this out from. In fact, the Gemara Kati mehocha nafka. We're learning it out from here, from the source that we brought with mehosam nafka. We learn it out from another pasuk, where it says v'nosnu b'nei Aaron HaKohen, that the b'nei Aaron HaKohen will place on the mizbeach, and the pasuk there says, what will they place? A fire. They'll place a fire on the mizbeach. And from the fact that it says B'nei Aaron HaKohen, even though it would be obvious, why is it adding that? It's saying B'kihunoi, while he's in a status of Kohuna, that means limit al Kohen Gadol, Shalavash, Big the Kohen Hadyet. If a Kohen Gadol is not wearing all of the 8 garments that he's supposed to wear, and he's only wearing the 4 garments of the plain Kohen, V'avad Avidasa, and he serves like that, Psula, the Aveda will be puzzle. So here's yet a third pasuk bringing the source that he has to be wearing all the garments. Now, even though over here, the Rishonim point out, over here it's actually adding a certain detail we didn't see clearly before, that the Kohen Gadol, if he serves with 4 garments, it's not enough. He has to have all 8, and otherwise it'll pass. We didn't really see that before, but nevertheless, it's understood from the pasuk that it says before, V'chagar ta'isam, that pasuk that the Gemara quoted before talks both about the Kohen Hadyet and about the Kohen Gadol, that they each have to wear the number of garments that's required for them, and otherwise they're not a Kohen properly.
But the Kohen Gadol has to have it all the time. Whenever he does anything, he has
correct.
to have 8.
All 8 garments, yeah.
Only 8.
Yeah.
Can't have anything done with 4 only?
Correct.
Okay.
Besides Yom Kippur, where he wears the white 4 garments, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But otherwise he has to wear the 8 garments. So why do we need this additional pasuk here if it's understood from the pasuk that we learned before, that if he's missing any other garments, it would be possible? Answers the Gemara, no, because if I would only learn from the pasuk before, maybe this only refers to a kind of aveda that is a necessary step in order for the kapara to take effect. But in this pasuk, it's actually speaking specifically about the kohen placing fire on the mizbeach. That's actually not something that's even necessary to be done for the kapara. And Rashi says the reason, because in the mizbeach, at least in a certain time periods, there was a nest where the fire came down min hashamayim, heavenly fire that already did the job. So then it won't be necessary for the kohen to put the fire on the mizbeach. So I would think that this kind of aveda, which is not always necessary, he doesn't have to wear the garments. So he doesn't have to wear. So therefore, we need the extra pasuk to say that in this case he should wear them as well. But the Gemara goes on and asks, "What vakati?" And yet another pasuk we see where it makes this point. Vakati mehacha nafka. Are we learning it from here? What mehasam nafka? There's yet another pasuk where it says, "V'orchu b'nei Aaron hakayim misanesachim v'gaymer." So here as well, the pasuk adds and it emphasizes that it's the b'nei Aaron hakayanim. They will arrange the pieces of the carbon on the mizbeach. What's the addition of hakayanim b'kihunan? When they are in their status of kohuna. And from here we learn mekan l'kayin hedyet. From here we actually learn like this, that the kohen hedyet, a plain kohen, shalav big the kohen gadol. If he wears extra garments, he wears the 8 garments of the kohen gadol. And he serves this way. He's not wearing the appropriate garments for him. So therefore it'll be puzzle. So we have yet another pasuk teaching us that the kohen has to wear his appropriate garments. Why do we need another pasuk? Answers the Gemara, because if I would only learn out from before, what we learned before is if he's lacking from the garments that he's supposed to be wearing, but if he wears extra garments, that's not necessarily going to disqualify the carbon. Therefore, here it's coming to say that he must wear the appropriate garments. That's for the kohen hadyet, 4 and not 8.
But what happens if he has extra garments?
It's going to, in the case where he did it.
Yeah, but that's still good.
Well, it depends. If it's regarding those avedas, like those 4 avedas that are necessary for the actual kapara, that's from the shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika. Not sure if shchita is included. L'chayra it is. So in those main avedas, it's going to passel the whole carbon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but other avedas like putting the pieces on the mizbeach or the fire, he's supposed to wear only 4 garments, or a kohen gadol 8. But it's not, if he doesn't, it's not going to pass the carbon because those are already after the zrika. Okay, now here we have more details about the exact quality of the garments that the kohen has to wear. We learned in the Braisa, if these garments are too long, or they're dragging on the floor, or misulakim, they're too short and they're hanging in the air, or mishuchakim, they're worn out. And he serves with this ksheira, it'll still be kosher. However, if he wears the mechnasayim, the pants, he wears 2 of them, double. Or shnei avnetim, 2 gartels. Or chasar achas, he's missing one of the 4 garments, or the kohen gadol, one of the 8. Or yitar achas, he's wearing 1 extra garment. Or yisrael al makas besaray, tachas bigday, or he has a bandage or something on his hand or somewhere on his body, which is going to be now a separation between the garment and the skin of his body. Oy shahaya mitushtashin, or the garments that he's wearing is mitushtashin, it's dirty with cement or so whatever it is. Oy mikurayin, or it's torn. Vavad avidasai, and he serves psula. Here the aveda will be pasul. Now Rashi explains that when it's dirty or it's torn, the reason it's pasul is because the Torah describes the garments, the priestly garments the kohen wears, as l'chavayt or l'sefaris, for honor and for beauty. And if it's torn or ripped or dirty, that is, then it doesn't qualify. Okay, now regarding some of the details here, this Brai said the Gemara brings the machlekes. Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, mirushalin ksherin. If the garments are too long, then it'll be kosher. Misulakin, however, if it's too short, psulin, then it'll be pasul. But the Gemara asks on this, how can he say that if it's too short, it's possible? But Vatanya, in the Brais it says, misulakin ksherin, that if the garments are too short, then it's going to be kosher. Right? That's the,
If they're too short, maybe we're going to see his skin.
Well, that's the Brais said, that if it's too short, or too long, or too short, the Brais said. Whether it's dragging on the floor or it's hanging in the air, either way it's going to be kosher. So how could Rav Yehuda say in the name of Shmuel that there's a distinction here, that if it's too short, then it'll be pasul? So the Gemara answers, Amar Rami Bachome answers, Lo kasha. There's no contradiction, it's a different story, different case. Kan shesilkan al yedei avnet. In the case where it's really the right length. But when he puts on the gartel, so it's sort of folded over a bit, and that lifted it up, then it's not a problem. But the lesson make cut a cloud. But in a case where it's just not the right length, then Shmuel said that it will be pasul. Okay, but now Rav argues with this. Rav says echod zeh ve'echod zeh. In both cases, whether it's too long, it's dragging on the ground, or it's too short, psulin. In both cases, it's going to be pasul. Now, what the Brais said before contradicts what Rav said. The Brais actually says that in both of these cases, it is going to be kosher. The Gemara will address it right here. It says, the Gemara Rav Huna ikla la'argiza. Rav Huna found himself in this place called Argiza, Ramalei bar ushpezichne. So one of the people there that was in the inn asked him the question. First, he asked him the question regarding Shmuel. Mi Yama Shmuel, is it true that Shmuel said Murushaling Shaden? That if the garments are dragging on the floor, then it's going to be kosher. But Misulakin, if it's raised up, Bsulin, then it's going to be possible. But Vatanya Misulakin Shaden. But in the Braise, as we asked before, it says that if it's too short, then it will be kosher. That was the question he asked Rav Huna. Amalei, so Rav Huna answers him, that's not a question. Bar Minodai, he could exclude this question, forget about this question, because the Shanye Rami Bachome, we already had before the answer of Rami Bachome that when it speaks about a garment that's too short, it depends. If it's actually too short, it's a problem, like Shmuel said. But if it only was shortened by the fact that he wore the gartel and it's folded over, then it's not a problem, as the Braise says. But Elol Rav Kashye, however, according to Rav, we have a problem here. Because Rav says both cases, if it's too long or too short, it's going to be pasul, and the Braise says that in both of those cases it's actually kosher. If you'll argue and say as follows, my murusholin, when Rav says that if it's too long, that it's going to be pasul, so what does it mean murusholin? Oh, sorry, let's go back to the Tana of the Braise. That's what the Gemara is saying now. If you'd want to answer according to Rav, and say as follows, my murushalin, when the Tana of the Braise says that if it's too long, it'll be kosher, when is that? Musulakin alidei avnit. It's a garment which is actually too long in size, but what the Kohen did is he folded it over and he lifted it up with the gartel, and now it's not too long anymore. And what Rav will say is, va'avnet megiz ogiz. Anything that's folded over because of the gartel he's wearing, that section of the garment folded over is like it's cut off. And therefore now it's not too long anymore. That's going to be the pshat here. So now this is actually a new point here where we see here that Rav is arguing on Shmuel. Shmuel said when you fold something over, we don't consider what's folded over to be as if it's cut off. On the contrary, whatever's folded over is like part of the garment and it's still the right length. But if you hear the Gemara saying the opposite point, according to Rav, if it's too long and it's folded over, that portion that's folded over is like it's cut off, and that's the reason why in the Braise it's saying that it would be kosher. But if that's the case, Ela Musulakin Kashya. But the question will remain regarding the second point that Rav said, that if it's too short, Rav says that it would be pasul, and the Braise says that it would be kosher. How are you going to answer that? And you can't give the answer that we said before, according to Shmuel, that in the Braise, the case is that he folded it over with his gartel. That doesn't work according to Rav. If the point that we just said now is true, if you fold it over with your gartel according to Rav, it's like that's cut off. So according to Shmuel, if you fold it over, then it's good. Then it's still part of the garment, but not according to Rav. So how are we going to answer the contradiction regarding when the garment is too short? So therefore Rav Zera says, Rav has a different interpretation of the Braise. Rav Chodatani. According to Rav, the statement in the Braise where it said 2 points, it said Mirushalin and Mesulakin. So the way we read it before is, it's 2 different cases. The garment that's dragging on the ground and the garment that's lifted up in the air. But that's not how Rav reads it. Rav reads it as one case. What does this mean? Mirushalin, a garment that was too long, Shesilkon al Yidei Avnet. And he shortened it by folding it over with his gartel. Then kosher, that it will be kosher. Because again, the point that Rav is saying is, when you shorten something just by folding it over with your gartel, it's like it's been cut off that part, and therefore it'll be kosher. So this is a second point that he argues on Shmuel. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti says about this, Mirushalin Shaloi Silkan, the longer garment that's dragging on the floor, and he did not fold it over, or he did not shorten it. Tanoi, it seems to be a machlokes Tanoim whether this is a problem or not. Because the Tanya, we learned in a Braise regarding tzitzis. The pasuk says as follows: Al arba kanfes ksuscha, that you wear the tzitzis, and it should be a 4. When do you have to have tzitzis? On a 4-cornered garment. So that means arba v'lei shalish, only a 4-cornered garment and not a 3-cornered garment. Maybe I would say that what it excludes is that if it's a 5-cornered garment, then you would also not have to put on tzitzis. So the Braise says no, but kishuayma asher techasaba. The pasuk goes on to say the garment with which you cover yourself with it. So that's an added expression, and that's coming to include something more. Harei balas chamish omer. It comes to say that if it's a 5-cornered garment, you have to put on tzitzis. So Hamani Mekayim Arba, when it says only 4, what is it coming to exclude? Arba v'loi shalish, a 4-cornered garment and not 3. Okay, but now the Gemara says, Umari Isal Arabas Balas Chamish, why is it that you're including a 5-cornered garment, or Lahaitzi Bal Shalish, and you're excluding the 3-cornered garment? Maybe you should say the other way around. Marbani. So here the Braise answers. The reason is Marbani Balas Chamish. The reason why I'm including and adding the 5-cornered garment is because sheyesh b'chlal chomesh arba. When you have a 5-cornered garment, it has 4 corners with an additional corner. So that's included in the obligation of putting on tzitzis. But umaytzeni bal shalish. However, I exclude the 3-cornered garment she'ein b'chlal shalish arba, because 3 does not have the 4 yet. Therefore, that's excluded. This is one Braise. But now Tanya, in a different Braise, we learned al arba kanvas ksuscha. It says it has to be 4-corner garment. Arba v'lei shalish. So he excludes both. That means 4, not 3, and also arba v'lei chamish, a 4-cornered garment and not a 5-cornered garment. So the Gemara explains. So here we see a machlokes whether a 5-cornered garment has to have tzitzis on it. So my labba kamiflagi. Don't you think that the argument here is the following point? The Marasavar Yeser Command the Isei Dami. The opinion that says that the 5-cornered garment is excluded, that's because the 5th corner, we can't ignore it. It's there. And if it's there, it changes the status of this garment. It's not anymore 4 corners. It's 5 corners, and therefore it's going to be potter of tzitzis. Torah says 4. But Omar Sava, that is, command the Lesei Dami. But the other opinion says that the added 5th corner is like it's not there. We just look at the 4 and the extra one is ignored. So therefore the Gemara wants to say that this machlokes regarding the tzitzis with the 5th corner is similar to what we're discussing here. The kohen is wearing the garment that has the full length, but it has extra. Should we ignore that extra? Or no? Or the extra is a problem? Just like the extra of the 5th garment by the tzitzis, exactly. Says the Gemara, Eloi, we can't compare the machlokes regarding tzitzis to our case. Because I can tell you by tzitzis, the kula alma command the isi dami, everybody would say that when you have the 5th corner, we're not ignoring it, it's there. But v'shani hacha, but by tzitzis is different, because the Rabbi Rachmana, Asher Techasabas, the Braise says that it's not a svara, it's the pasuk. It's an extra pasuk, Asher Techasabas, that says that even the 5th corner with 5 corners, you have to put on tzitzis. Now, the other Braise that disagrees with this and says that even 5 corners we exclude. So what does he do with this extra pasuk of Asher Techaseh, and why doesn't he add this? And so the Gemara look at the Tanya. He learns out from this extra pasuk another point, as it says in a different brayse. So there it says as follows: you'll see the tzitzis. Why does it use this expression? Prat luxus laila. That excludes that a night garment is, if it's designated specifically for the night, it's pater and tzitzis. Maybe I could learn differently. It says if you see, so maybe that should exclude someone that's blind, that he doesn't see. That's a person that will always be pater of tzitzis. Says the Gemara, no, we don't exclude it this way because kashuay mashetachasa basins. On the other hand, the pasuk says the one that will cover with it, so that's adding something. We use that pasuk to say that even a blind person is obligated in tzitzis. So hamani mekayim risam. So then when it says to see, what is that coming to exclude? Prat l'ksus laila. That pasuk is coming to exclude a night garment. Now the Brayse explains, but why is it that you're including a blind person and you're excluding the night garment? Maybe you should say the other way around. So the Gemara explains, no, we can't say this. The reason why I include the garment of the one that's blind, because even though he's blind, but there's others that could see this. So it's part of, it qualifies for Urisa Maisai, since others see. But however, I exclude a garment that's designated specifically for the night. This is something that at night no one can see it, and therefore it's excluded. So we see over here in this brayse that there's another thing that we learn out from Asher Tachasaba according to this opinion. Now the Gemara explains v'idach, and the other opinion that already learned out from Asher Tachasaba to add a garment with a fifth corner to be chayiv as well. Nafkele me asher. It doesn't say that, it says asher tachasaba. That word asher is an added thing to learn out from. And v'idach, the other opinion, asher loy darish. She does not darish on anything from this added word of asher. Okay, now the Gemara returns to the halachas of the garments of the kohen. So the Gemara Tana Rabbana, we learned in a brayse, it says bad, that the garments of the kohen gadol, the mechnasayim, it should be made out of bad. What's bad? That means sheyu shel butz. It should be made from flax. And then another thing we learn out is bad shiyu chadashim. Bad means that it should be new garments, or it should be brand new. The pishton, that is the bad pishton, the flax that's being used for this should be brand new. Bad shiyu shazurin. Bad also means that it should be spun together. Is that the translation for the word shazurin they have there? Should be
sixfold.
Right before that, before the sixfold.
I'm sorry.
Shazurin. What do they have for the shazurin? Is it?
Shazurin, but made of twisted thread.
Twisted. It should be twisted together.
Thread.
Now, not just one thread, but it should be twisted, a few threads together. Now, how many? Bad shiyu chutun kafel shisha. When it says bad, it means that it should be twisted together, 6 threads together. Bad also means shel yilbaish shel chayil iman. You should not wear any other regular plain garments along with the priestly garments. Okay, this is the brayse. So it seems from the brayse that we're learning everything from this one word of bad. Amalei Abai Rav Yosef. So Abai says to Rav Yosef, Bishlem Yishal Butz. First point, it says that it has to be from flax. So that's what the word bad means actually. Bad means flax. So Hakamash Malam butzin, it can be made only from the flax, but midyachrin aloy, not from anything else. But elabad sheyachadashim, if he's saying that the word bad itself actually tells me that it must be new. That means chadashim min shchakim loy. It must be new and not worn out. But Vatanya in Brayse we learn mishu chakin. If a kohen wears worn out garments, kshedim, it'll still be kosher. But if we're learning it out from this pasuk, it should be a must, and without it should be possible. Amalei, so Rav Yosef answers, you misunderstood this brayse. All the time, according to your understanding, you think we're learning all these details the brayse said just from this word bad. When it says here in the brayse, bad sheyachutun kafel shisha, that has to be twisted 6 threads. Bad so the question on this is, how can we learn out that it should be 6 threads? Bad chad l'chudei mashma. The word bad actually sounds like that 1 thread is fine, not 6 threads. So the details said here in the brayse are not all learned out from this word bad.
Bad is singular.
Yeah, it is. So how would we know that it should be twisted together 6? So therefore the prat in this brayse is as follows. Begadim shenem ben bad, the garments where the Torah says that you have to have bad, has to be from flax, and that's actually the pshat of the pasuk that we see here in the word bad. But then the other details are not learned from here. This chadoshim has to be nu, shezurin has to be twisted, sheyichot and kalfashisha should be 6. Yesh mehen lemitzvah, yesh mehen la'akev. The other details that we learn out is not learned from the word bad. There are other sources that the Gemara brings in other places for the Gemara in Yuman and other places where it brings the sources for all these other details. Some of them are just l'chatchila, that's what mitzvah means, and other ones are a must, la'akiv, and therefore, same over here regarding the question that Abaya asked regarding the worn out, but the Yevet is going to be kosher. Okay, but now the Gemara clarifies, Mimai da bad kisnahu. From where do we see that the translation of bad does mean flax? That is because it's davar ha'olim and akarka bad bevad. It's something that grows from the ground in a singular stalk. When you plant the seed, one stalk comes out of it, not like other things that you plant and more than one comes out. It grows each one separately. This is actually something that's brought. This is regarding Yom Kippur. On a regular day, the Kohanim, some of their garments are made just from bad. On Yom Kippur, the white garments that the Kohen wears, Kohen Gadol that is, are all made out of the flax that grow from the bad. Each stalk grows alone.
Which is linen.
Linen, correct, linen, yes. And the remez that it says about this is, just like Yom Kippur is one day a year, stands out for itself above the rest of the days of the year, similar to the way these garments themselves grow in a singular alone. Okay, but now the Gemara asks, if that's the source, Eimai could still argue and say, Amra, that it refers to wool, that each hair that grows from the animal's body seems to be growing a hair for itself. But the Gemara says, no, that's actually not the case. Amra miftzal. The hair itself, it splits. But the Gemara asks, if that's the case, kitnanami miftzal. The flax that you make the linen out of, it also, they bang it and then it splits open, so it also splits into two. So the Gemara says, no, when it comes to the flax, lakusa miftzal, only when you bang it, that's when it splits, but not by the wool. By the wool, the hairs of the animal, it splits open on its own. So bad, we know, refers to the flax. Ravina says, we know that it's linen from another pasuk, where it says this in Yecheskel clearly, Pare pishtim yiyal reisham. They wear the hats that are made from pishtim, from flax, on their heads. Michni say pishtim yiyal masneim. They're wearing the pants, also made from linen. Layachiru bayaza. They should not put the gartel in a place of sweat. So that's a pasuk in Yecheskel, which clarifies that it's made from linen. Ravashi asks Ravina, if this is the source, then v'ha'ad the asi Yecheskel minolan. Until Yecheskel came, how did he know how to translate the word bad? You can't say that Yecheskel himself innovated this. Everything has to be from the Torah. So until Yecheskel, where do they know this from? So he's answered him all the time. According to your questioning, this point that Rav Chisda said, that the following point, we don't see it in the Torah. But we see it in the words of Yecheskel. And that is that Kol ben Nechar, Arel Lev, Arel Basal, Yavi al Mikdashi, that one that's a Arel ben Benecha, this means someone that's a Rasha. And the Gemara will explain later what this means. He can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. And someone that doesn't have a bris, because his brothers died because of a bris, and doesn't have a bris, he can't come and serve the Beis HaMikdash. And so, who says this? This is a pasuk in Yecheskel. So, Atshuba Yecheskel Minolan. Until Yecheskel says this, how did we know that these people are disqualified from serving the Beis HaMikdash? Like again, the point there is, you can't say that, well, Yecheskel says so that's the source. No, but a Navi, a prophet, cannot innovate the new din. It has to have a source from before. So Ella, the answer is Gemara Gemirila. There is a source from before. In other words, it was a tradition. They knew that this is the halacha. And then Yecheskel said it, and it was recorded explicitly in the words of Yecheskel. So Hachanami over here regarding this halacha that the garments are made from the linen, Gemara Gemirila, the source they had this tradition that this is the meaning of the word bad, and then Yecheskel came and said it explicitly.
Regarding the son who's not circumcised, we said this morning that he can't do the avodah.
Cannot.
Cannot or can?
Cannot.
Oh.
There's actually machlokes about this. Rashi says he cannot, even in a case where it's not his fault. That's what Rashi says here. Okay, one more detail the Gemara explains about what it said in the pasuk here in Yecheskel. Mai lo yachiru beyoza. What does it mean when it says, do not put the gartel in a place of sweat? Amar Abaye, so Abaye explains, do not place the gartel in a place where they're sweating. Kedetanya, as we learned in the Braisa, when they put on the gartel, not below the loins where they sweat, and not above the elbows where they sweat as well. It's right across of the where the elbows are, where there's no sweat there. Let's just conclude the inyan here. The Gemara brings an interesting incident. Amar Ravashi, so Ravashi said, Omarli, Huna bar Nasan told me, Zimna Achada, there was one time, Havakeimne Kamei de Izgader Malka, I was standing in front of Izgader the king, and he was a Persian king. And my gartel that I was wearing was raised up very high. The Teisei Nahalei, and he lowered it down for me. V'Amali, and he tells him, Mamlechas Kayin and V'Gai Kadosh Ksiv B'cho. It says on you and all Yidden that every Yid is part of the like a Kayin and a part of the holy nation, and therefore you have to wear the gartel in the right place, like it says by a Kayin, not in a place of sweat. So Naki Asa. When Huna bar Nasan came to Ameimer and he reported this incident that happened, he told him, it was fulfilled for you, the pasuk that it says, when Mashiach comes, that kings will be there to serve you. And in this case, the Persian king was concerned about his gartel, and he even told him, you're special, you're Mamlechas Kayin of V'Gai Kadosh, and he lowered it down for him. That was a fulfillment of the inyan, and we see this fulfillment B'zman Hazeh, and with the coming of Mashiach. Thank you for the Yad Mamish.